How far is the Arab world's most populous and influential country becoming polarised between Islamist and secularist forces? The current vote for a new constitution in Egypt has exposed divisions which at times have erupted into violence on the streets between supporters and opponents of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamist president Mohamed Morsi. My guest today on Hard Talk is a leading member of Egypt's liberal and secular elite, Coptic Christian billionaire, businessman and politician Naguib Sawiris. Who has a better claim to be democratic, the Islamists or their opponents? Naguib Sawiris, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
I put it to you that liberals and secularists like you are finding it hard to accept that the Islamist parties are more popular in Egypt.
Well, I don't think they're more popular in Egypt. I think if you would do an election today, which is supervised by an international observers, transparent and clean, not like the constitutional the people would not vote for them anymore. They will not be a majority anymore.
But the fact of the matter is we can't deal with hypotheticals. We know very well that in the elections we had the parliament about a year or so ago, the Islamist parties, the Muslim Brotherhood and also Noor, the Salafist Muslims, won about 70% of the seats.
That's correct.
And Mohamed Morsi won 51% in the presidential runoff.
That's correct. I'm not defying that. What I'm saying is the circumstances under which people entrusted Mr. Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood with the new governing of Egypt, hoping that they will adhere by all democratic rules, that they will allow a democratic ruling, that will be freedom, that they will not go and prosecute the opposition, close down newspapers, crack on media and try and control and put their own people everywhere and not allow a real, true democratic process to happen. Also, people were hoping for a real economic revival of Egypt, Now, after 1 year or 2 years of the revolution, nothing of that has happened, and therefore, that's why I'm claiming that today, if we would run a honest, transparent, and supervised election, they would not be so popular.
You know, there was research by the Pew Group, the American polling organization, in February this year, which said that a majority of Egyptians not only want democracy, but they also want to see an enhanced role for Islam in Egypt's political life.
I think this is a true... No, I think
you're
it's
going against the grain.
No. Egyptians are religious by nature. I myself am religious, I have no problem with any religion, not mine, not the Islam. All what I'm saying is I'm a guy who believes in separation of state and religion. That's my nature, But I'm not going to impose my views on the majority of the people, So I accept that because Egyptians are religious, But what I'm trying to tell you, between February and now, the mood has changed. People have changed their opinion. Even a person like me was willing to cooperate with Mr. Morsi and the Muslim to happened. They went into a 24-hour session, and this whole constitutional document was cooked between midnight and the morning and was presented to the public for a vote.
All right,
so that's not the constitution.
You're not happy with the process. But let's just look at the contents then. What is it specifically about the contents in the draft constitution, around 250 articles, that you are opposed to?
Okay, then we need 4 hours, but I will give you an
Give us the highlights.
Okay. It has to do with, again, with the freedom, women's rights. It has to do with the powers of the president. It has to be with minority rights. It has to do with the exact definition, what is the Sharia law. It has to do with fundamental human rights. I can tell you something very simply. If this constitutional document was given to the United Nations to see whether it conforms to the human rights, it will fail drastically.
Well, I've got some of the differences between the 1971 Sawiris constitution and this current 2012 draft constitution on the role of Islam, because critics like you say it gives Islam an enhanced role in the state. Not much difference. Islam and Sharia, this is what the 71 constitution said. Islam is the religion of the state and Arabic is its official language. The principles of Sharia are the main source of legislation. That's what 71 said.
We have no problem with that.
Okay, well, this one says Article 2 stays as it is, that article, but Article 219 is new, and that says the principles of Sharia include general evidence and foundations, rules and jurisprudence, as well as sources accepted by doctrines of Sunni Islam and the majority of Muslim scholars.
That's the problem.
So what's the problem with that?
Can you define that?
Well, I mean,
that is a wording that has no exact legal definition, which means if extended, you will allow individual clergymen or people to elaborate about what is right and wrong according to their own suggestions. That's the way I read it, and many other people read it.
Well, the main authority, as you know, for one of the main authorities of Sunni Islam, particularly in Egypt, is Al-Azhar and the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar when it comes to women's rights, for instance.
So we should involve the Coptic Church too in telling us what... Do you want a constitution that derivates its definition of rights from the Azhar?
Well, I mean, why not? I mean, you've got Sharia as the main source of legislation
where on earth is that? Why are you denying us a real democratic regime, a constitution like the country you are in here now, like the United States Constitution, like any other... Where in the world do you have a constitution that says every time you need to do something, you need to go back to the Azhar to get their opinion?
Well, I mean, I was just looking at the differences and what it was specifically you didn't like about the Constitution, and I said to you that the principles of Sharia, the main source of legislation, was in the existing Constitution. When it came to religious minorities, you're a member of the 10% of Coptic Christians in Egypt. In the old Constitution...
That's the least of my concern.
Okay, in the old Constitution, there was no article about religious minorities. Now, in this Constitution, it says the principles of the legislation for Christian and Jewish Egyptians are the main source of legislation that organises their civil status and religious affairs. So, arguably, you're going to be better off under this Constitution because the minorities can follow their own religious codes, which is surely more of a guarantee.
Well, I would have preferred not to mix the matters, but I agree that this is a better provision. But this first half of it, it just puts a completely undefined... I'm trying to explain to you. It's words that are undefined, and therefore the powers that could be given to religious forces that want to interfere in the lives of Muslims before Christians. As my problem is not Christian and Muslim. My problem is human rights, freedom of speech, women's rights, minority rights.
Sure.
But that's my problem.
I was just putting to you and wanting to know, because obviously we're seeing a great deal of violence on the streets in Egypt at the moment, and secularists and liberals saying that this constitutional referendum is really
I'll ask you another question. Can you accept a referendum at 51%? Can you agree on a referendum? Can we have a constitution that has only been accepted by half of the people, and with all respect, the ones who don't read and write?
I don't want to second-guess the
No,
the
it is a fact. Cairo and El Gharbia, which is Tanta, 65% said no to that constitution.
Sure.
Why? Because the highest degree of education is in Cairo and El Gharbia. So the educated, 65% said no to that constitution till now. And even if it was 51% in the end, you cannot, any constitution in any country is taken by the absolute majority,
right,
which means 75% or at least 2/3.
We don't know what the result is, and I don't want to second guess it, but just looking at the exact opposition that people like you have to the Constitution, you've mentioned women's rights. But the draft says that citizens are equal before the law and equal in rights and obligations without discrimination. The earlier article linking women's rights specifically to Sharia was dropped. And arguably this new constitution actually gives women more rights because it says specifically that divorced and widowed women who, as you know, often get a really hard deal in Egypt, are better protected under this new constitution.
Well, I don't read it like that.
Well, I mean, I have the articles here, and it seems to really not say anything. I mean, how do you read it? Why should women be discriminated against in this constitution as opposed to the one in 71?
Because there is no explicit definition that the women have the equal rights like the men. There is no statement that women have equal rights like men. That's the problem.
Drew, it doesn't say...
Exactly.
It doesn't say women specifically, but it does say... Article 30 says citizens are equal before the law and equal in rights and obligations without discrimination.
Why did they remove the article about the women?
Well, because women are citizens.
Oh, okay.
But aren't women citizens?
I'm trying to explain to you that omitting this part is clearly not accepting the fact that women... It has I don't want to go through the religious context now, but they have their own theories about what women's rights are. So I don't want to go through that because I'm not really actually the expert on that.
No, but I mean, you know, if you look at the president, I just one last thing on the Constitution, you talked about freedom of speech, but actually there are 51 articles guaranteeing personal freedoms in the draft Constitution compared to the old one, which only had 24, including the right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Well, with all respect, you know, if you read the details of this, it has more obstacles in terms of freedom of speech than the last Constitution.
All right, well, I mean, those are the differences there that we've looked at.
Because when you say, for example, that newspapers can write, but they have to write what is true, and if they cannot deviate from what, and then we go into a definition what's true and what's not true, and so on. So you're opening the door for punishment, you know. All
right, let's see what happens on the referendum for the draft constitution. But if it is approved by a majority of people in Egypt, however slim, would you accept it?
No. Because it has been not done under a transparent... There has been so much forging into this election that is beyond belief. The problem that when you have a program of 25 minutes, I can tell you that the judges, 92% of the Egyptian judges boycotted that referendum. Do you know that?
Yes, no, I do know.
So who supervised this?
A number of judges, which is why the vote had to be spread over a week to move
some people pretended to be judges and they were teachers and they were civil servants in the ballots. Do you know that they found the whole box in the supermarket being changed? If 92% of the judicial system, which the people with conscience, this is the conscience of Egypt, says we will not supervise this constitutional document because it was not according to the law. It was not done according to the law. It does not represent everybody, and they refuse to supervise this referendum. Can the results of this referendum be just can they be correct? There is 3,000 complaints which have been launched with the committees attacking all the procedures. There were committees where Coptic citizens in a whole village were deprived from were bullied not to go and give their votes. Women were left to stand 6 or 7 hours in certain areas so they can get tired and leave.
So you claim voting irregularities. All right, well, we'll see. But just to ask you again, what happens then if the constitution is approved? What would the National Salvation Front do?
It would not
and you're a member of that.
It will not be accepted by the National Salvation. The National Salvation will request the voidness of this
and
constitution.
And you've got leading members like Mohammed al-Baradi, the former UN Atomic Energy Inspector.
He's an honorable man, has put his life on the stake, has a conscience. Mr. Sabahi the same way, Mr. Musa, everybody.
So when Hamdi and Sabahi says it will aggravate the political divisions, do you believe that we are going to see Egypt become even more dangerously polarized?
Yes, it's more dangerous because what you did is you took a document where the church and all the liberals said it does not reflect our discussions. You threw that down the drain. You told them you can go and bump your head in the wall. This is the document we're going to send to the people. Then you send it to people thinking you're going to get 80 or 90% consent. You don't get that. You get like 51 or 52. You forge, and the judges don't supervise. It's not a document that is valid. It is void today and will be void forever.
But, you know, when somebody like Mohammed Badei, Muslim Brotherhood's supreme guide, said on the 8th of December, be angry with the Brotherhood and hate us as you wish, but preserve Egypt's unity and let's turn to the judgment of the ballot box. I mean, he has a point, doesn't he? I mean, you're saying that the process, the electoral process is somehow being flawed, but he has a point.
What is the point? The point is that you can go and run a falsified votes without the supervision of the judges, without any supervision. You falsify the outcome. He's saying that because he knows the outcome, because they know they will falsify the votes. I mean, I would respect that if it was transparent, if there was the Carter, the human rights associations will all deprived from attending the ballots. For the first time, even in the presidential election or the parliamentary election, they were allowed to come in. This time they will. The Human Rights Organization in Egypt issued a statement that they have never seen more falsification in a process than this one, and more to that effect, you know, after all that they only got like 53%. So can you imagine a constitution where half of the people say we don't want it?
All right,
and
well,
then
what are you going to do now? Because I mean, there is an argument that you have to find an accommodation.
We are going back to the original, to the only left entity that can protect us, to the judges and the law and the courts of Egypt, which are now being, the Constitutional Court being now, but do you know that this referendum happened while the Constitutional Court was being surrounded by Muslim Brotherhoods to prevent the judges from going into the courts to rule, on the legitimacy of this referendum? Which why? Because they know that the Constitutional Court will rule against the legitimacy of this. So can you call this a free referendum?
But you know
Can you call a free referendum when the media was surrounded by Salafi groups in order to prevent and shut up the media? So this is the environment we're having.
So it seems that you're more critical of the process rather than the actual contents of the draft constitution. Because when we discussed what was in the draft constitution, it didn't seem to give much of a difference, different role to the role of Islam.
We don't have the time here, but the devil is in the detail. I'm against both, the document and the process.
How do you, but there is an argument that a lot of people have that the secularists and the liberals in Egypt can't just Brotherhood in the Islamists away. You're going to have to find an accommodation.
I agree with you.
You have to find an accommodation.
That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
Okay, so where are you?
Like ransacking the premises of the Muslim Brotherhoods is a mistake. Like some people went and put the fire in the Muslim Brotherhood.
Exactly.
That's exactly wrong.
And that's
also dangerous. That's dangerous.
I should just explain. We've seen violence being perpetrated by secularists who perhaps are still loyal to the former Mubarak regime, ransacking offices and so on.
This former Mubarak story, we're done with this.
All right.
They're all in jail now, and we're done. But there are people who committed these crimes
against accommodation. And
the Islamists also went and burned down Wafd.
Yeah, well, that's one of the parties that's in the National Salvation
completely.
Front.
That's not a solution.
So where is the accommodation? Can I just explain? It's not only. Can I just?
Formula for you.
Can I just explain to people listening that we're not only seeing the Islamist parties do well in Egypt, we've seen them in post-Arab Spring countries like in Tunisia.
Well in Egypt, just by the way.
In Tunisia, you've seen a Nahda party.
And they're not doing well in Tunisia.
In Tunisia, a Nahda party, Rashid Ghanouchi, is from the moderate
they have
Muslim party
miserably,
there. But can I just say that the point I want to make is that President Mounsif Marzouki in Tunisia has reached an accommodation with a Nahda there because it's the more moderate party than the Salafists.
Yes.
And I put it to you that you secularists and liberals are going to have to find an accommodation, aren't you, with the more moderate Muslim Brotherhoods rather than the more extremist Islamists?
Now I agree.
So how are you going to do that?
I reached out for them. I made a statement the day before yesterday. And I told them, look, you need to decide. Do you want to control, put your people, everybody, and enforce into the Egyptians into a lifestyle they don't want, or you want to succeed? If you want to succeed, we will reach to you. We will help you on the economy. We will help you inside the country. We will help our country to stand up and become a country like anybody else in the world, which means economically prosperly. But the one condition is you need to understand, we will not be bullied. We will not be scared. You will need to adhere by the democratic process. You cannot put your opposition in jail or accuse them. Now the ongoing tone in Egypt, Mr. Sawiris is doing that. Mr. Badei is doing a conspiracy, and they have their own hooligans going to the district attorney and filing claims against the symbol of the. This will not work. We are ready, and I'm telling you now, we are ready to cooperate with them to help the country go forward and to stop this division that is going to that's threatening a civil war in Egypt.
All right, but I mean, there are commentators, somebody like Maher Azam, who's an Egyptian based here in London, an expert on political Islam, who says that it's not the Islamists who are the spoilers, but it's more the liberals and the secularists. Not just her, even an article in Time magazine.
My advice for her is to go down to Cairo and talk to, and once she knows what has been happening to all the opposition people, they've been bullied, they've been prevented from, the media is being prevented to speak. Mr. Morsi has been putting all his followers into the national newspapers, you know. The politicians are being threatened that they don't. So,
but they are in touch with the masses, aren't they? Because, I mean, you know, there was an article in Time magazine by Bobby Ghosh this month which said that in November that Islamists are good Democrats in Egypt because they understood democracy better than the liberals, not just better organised, but they also campaigned harder and smarter. They had their social welfare networks. As we know, the vast majority of a lot of Egyptians, 40% of them, live on $2 a day. 30 million of Egyptians are illiterate. And they knew how to actually try to appeal to the masses by saying, we will help you economically.
Okay, where are we now economically?
Well, economically very bad.
Yeah, so where is that? People were expecting...
You can't do that in 2 minutes, can you? Inflation 18%.
It's been 2 years, nothing happened. You know, look, I want to tell you something. They need to understand that we are partners. You can't just wipe us out. They will not be able to wipe up the liberal, the secular. They will not be able, because we will fight for what freedom and democracy. We will fight for that. Now, having said so, we are willing to be partners with them. Work what was best for Egypt. Raise the economy, invest, but they need to respect us and not bully us. If you bully me, I won't be bullied.
Are you being bullied?
I am being bullied too, yes. But I'm done from a very special species.
And you are from the richest family in Egypt. You've got business interests in telecoms, in construction, real estate,
why would I risk,
big employer.
Why would I risk all of that? It would have been best for me is to align myself with these people, right? It would have been best. Why would I go into an opposition, threaten all my well-being, my worth, my family? Why would I do that? Because for me, there's something which is more important than anything in life, is freedom.
But it's also more than that, isn't it, for the Egyptians? As Khalid Fahmy, history professor at the American University in Cairo, says, in order to truly challenge the Muslim Brotherhood at the next elections, that the liberals must engage the Islamists on a different platform, such as the economy, rather than fight an ideological battle of seculars versus Islamists.
I agree.
And that's where the battle really is. But can somebody like you, rich billionaire, richest family in Egypt, really connect with those people, with those...
Yes, of course not. Of course, if the only condition I have is they need to understand that, first of all, they need to respect the democratic rules, which are very simple. You cannot bully your opponents. You cannot scare them. You cannot shut the press. People should be free to speak. All the things we did, why did we do it? We are equal partners. I, as a Christian Egyptian, I am just as any Muslim Egyptian, so I am an Egyptian first before my religion. If they accept these two principles, then we will work with them to take the country. We want to take the country out of this because people, the masses are fed up. They're fed up from all these intellectuals, constitution. They don't understand that. They want their bread and butter, they want their work, they want to go back to their lives.
All right, and a final question to you. What is the danger of Egypt becoming a theocracy?
It's not a danger, it's happened already. That's what we are in now, that's what we are against. That's happened already. That's what the West doesn't want to see. I mean, we are sitting here, the West actually believes in, and the West now, because they're saying, well, we have no alternative, and these liberals, who are they? And we don't know who they are. They're not united. And because the United States' main interest is the West is not important. Women's rights, minorities are being washed away. So what?
Naguib Sawiris, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you.